Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Sunday, April 5th, 2:14 p.m., 2026. I got a decent amount to go through today. I should be able to get through all of it. If I can't, then I'll just make another video later. But I'm just going to jump right into this, okay? So I'm going to start off with Doge because it's already out here on my screen. I have a trade set up here, and not a financial advice or anything, right? Nothing about this video, right? You do your own due diligence. I am in this trade personally. Um, Time will tell, see if it works, but I do like this. And, the risk isn't horrible here on Doge compared to the reward, right? And up here in this blue zone, there's a bunch of fair value gaps here. Like this was straight down for, multiple days back here through January. So I see that as like an area of interest. Probably liquidity up there. And there's a downtrend line, right? One, two. I would expect Dogecoin to eventually hit this trend line once again, whenever that will be. Maybe in the summer. I'll get into why in a second. And then looking at bearish Fibonacci, right? Just finding resistances. The 786 here, going from the low of February to the high of December. The 786 is here at like 16.6, right? Um, so yeah, you could do something like this, but that you know, who knows, right? This could be just the first target if this were to break out to the upside. Dogecoin has been basing here, right? Finding support in the eights. Um, and now I'm going to get into the timing side of things because, there's only so much you can look at on the price chart right now. It's just basic, right? So the timing side of things here. Here we go. All right. So I have a 322-day cycle and a 132-day cycle, which are both troughing right now. Let me zoom in on this. Both troughing here, April 5th, and the cyclic RSI did come back inside the blue channel. So that's a nice sign. And the cycle momentum, it looks like it's actually going green today. It just hasn't confirmed yet, right? It would confirm, by tomorrow. That's also a good sign. Um, This cycle composite does go up into June, which also doesn't correlate with Bitcoin, other crypto, cycles that I've seen, um, even equities like some tech stocks, S&P even, the VIX, which I'll get into all that too. But there's a ton of correlation going into around June. There's something about June, even May too, um, where there could be some sort of high if there is upside going into that time period, right? And you're going to see a pattern in this video. When I look at the cycles, there's a lot of confluence for that time period. So it's very interesting. And a lot of confluence with now, currently, right now, and also throughout April of troughing cycles, okay, happening now and throughout April. All right. So it's very interesting. Just keep an open mind. Don't worry about the headlines, news, whatever the heck it is. That stuff, in my opinion, doesn't matter. I could care less about any of that. What matters to me is the data that's right in front of your face. Um, you do the work on that and analyze it and come to your own conclusion. So this is the Doge cycle. There's not much else to say about it. So that's my quick setup on Doge. It's, I'm just trying to keep it simple. Where's the risk and reward? Um, and adding that on to the cycle analysis too. All right. Now I'm going to get into Bitcoin. All right. So here on a daily chart, similar to Doge, right? It's been basing. It's been just chopping in the range for quite a while. Um, this zone here is Fibonacci support from the March high to the February low. All right, it's a very similar chart to what I've had in the last video. Not too much has changed besides where the price action currently sits, right? We have a downtrend line here that Bitcoin did break out of yesterday, right? So, you know, a little positive sign. Overall, still stuck in the range, right? Um, and in support, which is good. It is below this orange trend uptrend line. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Bitcoin's in a range ultimately, right? Between 75 and 60s, or at the lower 60s. All right. So that matters more, in my opinion, than a trend line. Now, a square nine, yeah, I have a key date here, April 8th, and then May 5th. So those key dates are the square of nine here. Blueprint square of nine. Check them out on Twitter. Phenomenal work. So we're coming up to that on Wednesday, plus or minus a day or two, right? As always. But we're getting in a pretty interesting time period here for Bitcoin going into next week. And then the next date after that would be May 5th. Um, yeah, and just looking back, like at the beginning of the square nine here, right on the black verticals, right? Not the dotted, just the solid black ones. That was a short there. That was a short. Yeah, continuation of a short. This was actually a long short, and I guess a long. Ultimately, in a range, it's whatever there. So if if upside does come through this midpoint here, where this key day of April 8th, going into the beginning of May, maybe a little correction comes after that. Don't really know. I'm more curious to see how price action shapes up going into these dates. Currently, price action is towards the bottom side of a range in Fibonacci support going into April 8th key date. So very interesting to me. Right. Um, Not much else to say here on the daily chart for Bitcoin. I'll get into the cycles on it in a second, which not much has changed on it. All right. This is a chart. I don't know if I brought it up here in my last video here, but this is a very interesting chart here on Bitcoin. So if you go on the monthly time frame, right, look at all the history, you put on the moving averages, and you do the 9, 21, and the 50. Okay. What matters more is the 9 and 21. You don't have to have the 50 on here. Um, the 9 and 21. The 9 is in blue, the 21 is in black. Okay, so currently the 9 crossed below the 50, right? Blue crossed the black. All right. Now you might say to yourself, like, okay, there's a really good chance Bitcoin goes lower then. Maybe. I don't know at the end of the day. But I don't. I think a lot of downside has been put in, honestly, on Bitcoin. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm going to show why. Right. So 2 months ago, from before this crossing, so in February, there was a significant low here made at 60K roughly on Bitcoin. All right. Let's go to last cycle when this happened. All right. So when the blue crossed the black, a month prior, a significant low was made in June, 17.5K, right? Yes, it did ultimately make a new low, but it was not for long. It was for what, a couple weeks? Here, this is the monthly chart. So a few weeks, it stayed below 17.5K, right? So it ultimately, it's just basically a bottoming base here, right? If you bought in this area, you went through a little bit of red for a few weeks. Ultimately, it was a phenomenal buy. Long term, higher time frame. All right. The cycle prior, the blue crossed the black. A month prior, the bottom was put in. A significant low was made. It based longer term, higher time frame. It was a great time period to be a buyer. All right. 2015, blue crossed the black. The bottom was put in. A significant low was made. It based higher time frame. Was a great buy. It went higher. Yes, it's only a few data points, but that's what we have on Bitcoin. All right, so we work with what we got. Um, could there be wicks? Price action under 60K? Sure, sure. I have a 382 Fibonacci here, going from the all-time high, I believe, to the 2019 low. That's a 382 fib right there, or 50,000. Maybe that's tagged or somewhere in the 50s. But in reality of things, I really don't think Bitcoin has a lot more downside to go if there is more downside. Um, I know that's a lot, very contrarian to a lot of people. Um, but hey, if that works, if it works in my favor, or it's not just me. There's other people who are bullish too. If it works in the contrarian's favor, you get freaking paid. So I'd rather be a wolf among sheep. What they say. So that's my higher time frame look on Bitcoin. Um, yeah, and then at using the cycles here too, right? 4 year lows, rough 45-month cycles, right? It's not perfect, but 45-month lows. 10% of that is in green, right? If you go a little bit past, so what, maybe close to 15% of the 45-month cycle, you're gonna get February roughly of that. This is basically a bottoming zone, right? Um, on my Michael Jenkins type of chart here, Bitcoin's still holding above this trend line here. This is coming in now at like 63.6K. So as long as there's no weekly closures below that level, I think Bitcoin can go to the higher 70s or even 80s in a bear market rally, right? Or a bear market range type of thing, base pattern. Don't really know. But if it holds above this trend line, I'd expect over time it hits the top of this other trend line above. All right, now I'm going to go into Bitcoin's cycle. Let this load. All right, cool. And I guess I can actually update this now too. Do this. Update it really quick. Cycle composite of 280-day cycle and the 80-day cycle. All right. So we see that today, actually similar to Doge, hasn't confirmed. Cycle momentum is going green though, which is cool. Heading into April 20th, roughly, mid-April, for this composite cycle high coming in here, right? Trough in mid-May, April, May, yeah, mid-May, and goes into possibly July. Um, yeah, that's pretty interesting there too. I'm going to turn on the FLD as well, and we see here that yeah, there was a bullish cross that happened here on the FLD. So that's a good sign. Let's see what happens. So the 40-day FLD, half of the 80-day cycle, right? Price action is just sitting inside this FLD, right? So some sort of big move I think is going to be happening soon on Bitcoin, whichever way that's going to be. If it's upside or downside out of this range it's in. Um, my bias is bullish heading into next few weeks and possibly even June, July. Um, yeah, some sort of move is going to be happening here on this FLD, most likely here. Um, right now, it did confirm there's a green dot here in FLD. Cycle momentum went positive. It's not confirmed yet, but by tomorrow it will be if it is going to stay the same. Um, that's a good sign heading into this, composite peak of the cycle here, mid-April. A couple more weeks. All right. That's pretty interesting. And if this does break to the upside of the 40-day FLD, well, we can put on the 140-day FLD, half of the 280, right? And an upside target, previous price action here, about 84,000 roughly, right? Yeah, it's going to be about the same. The FLD resistance, 84,000. It can even go up to 93. I'm not calling that. I don't know. I don't know. But there is confluence with the, the mid 80s, right? Um, oops, let me turn off the square nine, clean this up. All right, yeah, golden pocket right here, 83 to 85K. So there is confluence there. All right, the mid 80s. A lot of people will say you're freaking crazy if you say, you know, sentiment's horrible right now. So I like that too. All right, so that's Bitcoin really. The downside risk is obviously breaking under 63K on a weekly close. Yeah, that wouldn't be too hot of a sign there. But currently, it's staying above, so great sign. And yes, there's a red trend line here that I'm going to keep an eye on. I have an alert on there, so curious to see what happens if Bitcoin does hit that. Right, and one last thing on Bitcoin too. We go to bar chart, just look at some simple seasonality. Let's load. All right, yeah, April. April's a pretty decent month here, right? May and June are whatever, but April's solid, and so is July, and the cycle has a peak in July. The cycle composite has a peak in July. All right, so interesting stuff. All right, so that is Netflix. The next thing I want to get into actually will be the VIX, right? I did a cycle on this last night, and it's very interesting. Um, Again, it's contrarian to what a lot of people may think right now. The majority, right? The herd. And let me fix this up. I don't know why it's always like this. I have to do this. But we have here, so on the cycle analyzer, I started this back here November 26th, 2019, right before this big pop. And this is a 128-day cycle with a stability score of 0.75. It's very high. It's strong. That's really good, right? And it did peak here, the end of March, right? So yeah, VIX could make another high in this, apex of this cycle. Yeah, possible. But there's a good shot that a high was made on the VIX so far, and it could, trend lower or trend lower and then sideways, and to the end of June, July. Put the pieces together here. You paying attention? It's really interesting. Um, yeah, and then on my own VIX cycle, it, it's not as clean. Um, I have here that there could be a high in June. Um, yeah, no, it's looking really far ahead. I had these cycles on here for well over a year now. They're decent. I'm gonna watch this though. Put more emphasis on this cycle for the VIX on the cycle analyzer tool. It's a much more cleaner look. And just looking back, with that high stability score, it's a very solid cycle here on the VIX, and also has confluence with what I've been looking at. I'm going to go into. I'll go into the S&P. I'm actually going to start with the psychoanalyzer here on the S&P. Do this. So I have two cycles here, an 82-day and 129-day. Both of them composited together. Yeah, it did trough at the end of March. All right. And goes higher potentially into June. Right. Um, and just looking at the 80-day, yeah, that was a pretty solid time to find a low on there. Right. This is the end of May, 129-day cycle. Trough comes in potentially next week. Maybe it's a higher low. And yeah, this goes into July. Put them together. Pretty solid cycle. So I'm keeping an eye on this. Yeah, as of right now, I don't have a bearish bias on the S&P. Uh, yeah, I have a bullish bias, across the board. Just me personally, mm, I'm pretty sure I've seen some posts. The put call ratio and all that, isn't that pretty high? Sentiment's also, in the stock market too. Same as crypto too. It's pretty bad. Um, I, I think there's more risk of losing money if you were to go on the short side, now than you would have if you would have, you know, a few weeks ago, a month ago, you know. So that's my bias on the ES. I have a Fibonacci support zone here. It did tag it pretty much to zero point 0.5 of this because this is the 0.5, 382, and 236. Um, Maybe a higher low gets put in here if this trend line were to break. But on the 4 hour time frame, the EMAs, have curled up, and the bulls would need to see continuation into next week on the S&P. And just putting this away, yeah, yeah, still downtrend and has a lot of work to do, right? But bottoms always look ugly. If there's going to be a bottom, yeah. The main thing for the yes for me is the cycle, right? That I would need. I look at. I have my own notes, and that comes first, and then I'll look to try and position myself. All right. So some individual stocks. Microsoft here. I did add a position last week, and I am going to look to add more this coming week, right? If it holds up, right? So on the 2 day time frame, it's getting a third big green dot, right? This does not happen often at all, right? The previous two times were here in April 2025 and March 2025. Next one before that was wow, 4 years ago, May of 2022. It was not the low, right? They go lower, but you can see here that these signals don't print often. Yeah, and it's getting a third one. Microsoft is very oversold. Um, yeah, okay. It's really oversold, and it's Microsoft, right? Uh, I'm not trying to mid curve this. And yeah, I have a key date here on going from the March 27th low, right? If you add the price there, so 3, 5, 6, 2, 8. So if you add that together, um, and then in numerology, it's just 1 through 9, right? So there's no any number higher than 9 is just a combination of 1 through 9. So 3, 5, 2, 6. Do I have this here? Let me just do it really quick on a piece of paper. 3, 5, 6, 2, 8, 8, 16, 22, 24. So 24, that would be 6. So you minimize it till it's a number, right, between 1 through 6. Then you would divide it by 3, 5, 6, 2, 8, right? And you get, either a calendar day or just bars. It really depends on the asset. Like on crypto, when I do it on crypto, since it trades 24/7, you can just go bars, right? It trades 24/7. With stocks, it's different. Sometimes it's either bars or sometimes the calendar days. It depends on what the stock is. So I believe here it was either the bar or the day. I think it was the day I did. So potentially a date, around May 28th, the end of May. I'm just leaving that there for now. See what happens going into this date. But that's an interesting way of coming up with key dates as well. If you add the significant high number or low, and then divide it, you can get key dates like that as well. I know it's really weird, but it does work. Trust me. Um, yeah. All right, and some upside resistance levels here around 398, 396. There. There's been, a lot of price action around that level, right? And a significant high that would have to get taken out for Microsoft would be 413, right? So currently, I'm liking it as a bounce play. It could potentially turn into a swing. Um, and I'm going to go into the cycles here. 313-day cycle, similar to Netflix. Let's update this. All right, so change to 314-day or whatever. Put on the FLD. Do like 150. All right, yeah. So the 300-day cycle here on Microsoft makes a trough. The exact period is May 1st, April, the end of April. And remember, it's just a bottoming zone. It's not always going to come in at that date. If it is going to come in, 10% of the 300-day cycle is roughly 30 days. So you could, the beginning of April, or, there's that May or the end of May, right? Um, I think it's a pretty good low has been put in on Microsoft. We'll see. Looking at like the technical analysis side, right, that I just did. Um, so it's in the bottoming zone. There's a bullish divergence on the cycle momentum here, right in the red, higher lows and lower lows on the price. Um, you know, a confident look here on Microsoft for at least a short term or mid term bounce. All right, we're going to go into JP Morgan here. So on the weekly time frame, it did confirm, pretty solid deep green dot here, and the stochastic began to come over, and VWAP went positive, right? Um, Ultimately, like there's a bit of a range here between like 318 and 280, right? And by the end of last week or this past week, it did come up to the mid part of that range. But there's bullish signals coming off like this weekly signal in market cipher. That's a promising sign. And then another thing too here, this is very interesting. So on the left chart, this is XLF, the financials ETF. On the right, it's XLE, the energy ETF, right? The pattern here on XLF is a falling wedge going into Fibonacci support. Market cipher B, if there is upside next week on XLF, it will print a green dot. If there is upside, right? If there's what? If this starts to move into the 50s, the lower 50s, a green dot will print on market cipher, right? So a bullish trigger, and those stochastics are already coming up. So is the VWAP, similar to JP Morgan, which is a top holding in XLF. Meanwhile, the XLE ETF is hitting resistance around the 2618, right? Market cipher B printed a red dot weeks ago, but it never confirmed a green one again. Maybe it does, but it has not yet. Endostochastic is coming down, and VWAP is negative. And if this trend line breaks here on XLE next week, there could, it could be a sign of some consolidation to come through for XLE, and there could be rotation out of the energy side, potentially into the financial side, right? And then I'm going to go into the cycles for JP Morgan, which again gives great confluence. So 122-day cycle here. It found a low here end of March, beginning of April, and this goes higher into June. Once again, that June time period. There's something about June, July. There's something about it. Um, don't know what it's going to be, but something's going to happen, right? Probably. Narratives follow price. Excuse me. Um, yeah, so JP Morgan looks good to me as well. I'm also in the trade too. Um, look at Netflix. This is, oops, is that there? Okay. Netflix, one of my favorite plays right now. I'm in on this as well. A weekly higher low was set here, March 20th, right? Above this gap support. Broke out its downtrend line, maybe a bull flag. Daily EMAs are rising. Price is pushing up. Looks like a three wave. I'm not an Elliott wave guy, but I think they would say this is a wave one up, wave two down, and could push up for a third wave, which is still in a downtrend, right? So it's corrective, but it has relative strength to the rest of the market or majority of the market, right? If there is upside continuation above, what was this, 100? The 0.5 here is 104. Trend lines coming in around 110, 111, and there's Fibonacci resistance here as well, 111 through 120. And on the Netflix cycle, there's FLD resistance as well. Let me pull this up. I'll update this too. Yeah, Netflix looks amazing. No, what did I just do? I did not mean to click that. All right, turn on the FLD. Just do 155. And this 300-day cycle does potentially go up into end of September, where the FLD does make a low, which is FLD is usually the opposite of the cycle, right? And if there's upside continuation on Netflix, again in that Fibonacci zone between 111 and 120, FLD resistance is sitting at like 115 to 125. So there's some confluence in that area as well. Cycle momentum just went green on Friday, right? So Netflix looks really good. I'm actually looking to add a little bit to my long position. Want to add to the winners, not add to the losers. Um, Palladium. So this is PALL, right? The Palladium shares ETF. Uh, the daily chart, it is a falling wedge, which is a bullish pattern. It did break out of it. Just need to see follow through next week here on Palladium. Want to see these EMAs start crawling up, right? Price action pushing up, and these EMAs following price to give it, support. Um, again, and if this does continue to the upside, right? There's a gap here, like between 142, 145, Fibonacci resistance here, golden pocket, 148, 150. 50% here. So it's still in the downtrend. It has work to do. It's in a daily downtrend, but higher time frame. Let's go to the Palladium chart really quick. It is still in an uptrend. Okay. There's a broadening channel here, which is really interesting because I have shares of PALL, and originally I got into this trade when Palladium hit this trend line low. I'm mainly still looking for just short term, midterm bounce, but if it does the work that the Giga Bull is needed to do for it to really continue this uptrend and hitting the top side of this broadening channel, it could turn into a swing trade, right? Um, so just something I'm watching. It's really interesting, right? Palladium. Um, I haven't done much analysis on gold or silver, but I know if you turn on the monthly EMAs on them, they're still sitting above some pretty important moving averages. It's still an uptrend. It's still in an uptrend, right? Just if you zoom in a little bit, on the dailies, yes, it's a downtrend and consolidation, whatever. But higher time frame, it's still in an uptrend, right? So that's the context. Um, yeah, I like the look of palladium here, short term and even possibly long term, higher time frame. Right, just gonna have to see what what happens with this trade. But as always, even if this does turn into a swing trade, um, I would still take profits along the way. You got to manage the risk. All right, not every trade's a Hail Mary, right? And I do have cycles here on PALL. Just need to get to it. Or Palladium, actually. It's whatever. The charts, the chart says enough here. Palladium and PLO. I want to get this moving along because I don't know how much more time I have. Google. So on the 3 day chart, next week, if there is upside going into next week, Google will print a 3 day green dot here, a deep one, and stochastics already moving up, and VWAP's trying to go positive. It's in a falling wedge, right? A bullish pattern, until proven otherwise. This Fibonacci support is a golden pocket from this high to this low, right? The April low of 2025. Prices, that's a pretty nice bounce in the 3 day. It engulfed the previous day, right? Go to the weekly really quick. It's a solid weekly candle. Stochastic on the weekly is turning up too. Um, yeah, if this does come out of this channel where it breaks out to the upside, there's Fibonacci resistance here between 310 and 330. I don't really need to go into the cycle on this. It's finding a trough right now, and again, June, July, there's a peak. I don't know what else to say. There's a ton of confluence, right? All these risk assets they're going to follow each other to a certain extent. Um, it's yeah, they're going to follow each other to a certain extent, right? So there's a bullish setup here on Google, nonetheless, and the cycle support it. DXY. So there was a bearish divergence that played out. It looks like it played out. A bit of a double top kind of, right? Bearish div right here, a higher high on the price, lower high on market cipher B, but it's still holding this channel. So I'm still bullish on the dollar longer term. Um, so this, I would not be surprised if this breaks above 100. Martin continues following this channel. Right, the daily EMA here, the 21 and the 50, still pointing up, and price action is just riding that right now. So dollar looks fine, unless it starts breaking under this channel and the 21 starts curling. Right, it's in a bullish position until that happens. The dollar on the daily time frame. So XLV, there's an inverse head and shoulders here, right? Bouncing off of the 50% from the recent high January to the low of last year, 2025. Yeah, 3 day. If there's upside again, similar to Google, like if there's upside going into next week, this will print a dot on the 3 day time frame. Stochastics are already trying to curve, and the VWAP's already trying to go positive as well. And is that money flow pointing up? Yeah, money flow is pointing up as well on the 3 day time frame for XLV, the healthcare ETF. All right, so I like this setup too, and I'm interested in buying calls on this next week. I want to see how it goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for XLV before I pull the trigger if I'm going to. Right. And a measured target. All right. This isn't going to do it overnight, but this could go up to 193 from 146. Longer term, right? Higher time frame. This pattern's going to play out. So pretty interesting there. I like the setup on XLV. Amazon. I really like this too. Broadening channel here, longer term, right? Higher time frame. It is a broadening channel. You can't say it's not. I mean, I guess you can, but the fact is right in front of your face. So, um, not much risk. I like the setup. I'm interested in buying calls on this as well, entering a trade. Um, right, because your risk is very defined. If it breaks to the underside of this broadening channel, you cut the trade. Um, if it doesn't, well, upside could be this trend line here. There's a level here of interest, like 242, right? In longer term, if you want to buy the Amazon longer term, it's not a bad area, right? If it breaks on this bottom channel, you cut. If it doesn't, well, no, good shot at some upside, right? So I like Amazon here. Looks good. And again, the cycle part of this is similar to Google, Microsoft, yes, Bitcoin. They're all troughing. They're all troughing now or throughout April. Um, and highs come in on those cycles in the summer. It's I don't know what else to say. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's design. Um, don't really know if I really got anything else to look at. This is TILL, Agricultural Strategy ETF. Uh, Daily time frame, it's just consolidating. It's getting tight. It looks like this is Fibonacci support here, so looks like it's chilling out a bit. This has like corn, wheat, sugar, whatever else in it. So if this is chilling out, maybe that's a nice sign that maybe risk assets can start moving up too. Um, don't know. I'm not a macro guy, or I don't know. I just look at charts mainly, right? So I'm keeping my eye on this stuff because if you go to like a weekly time frame, um, this trend could be trying to change. So I'm watching this because there could be a good opportunity for a long. So yeah, I think that's really it for now. Um, Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one and have a good Easter, good holiday, and good luck trading next week. Peace.